My flesh made of metal. You about to dance with the devil. You ain't never seen his power. We battle down to the final hour. My flesh made of metal, About to dance with the devil, You ain't never seen his power. We battle right down to the final hour.
So when I was the other day, my kids are all going virtual. You know, COVID is everybody making a decision on virtual or not virtual, and we've tried for months to try to get them online here and just been unable. And finally, the other day, my wife sends me an address and she says, if you have time, can you stop by this school and see if you can figure out how to get these kids logged on? We can't seem to get them logged in. We don't know how. So I said, sure, no problem. I get in, I put the address in my GPS, and wouldn't you know it, the school was actually 5 blocks away from where I needed to go. I could have literally walked there and had things solved months ago. So I drove over to the school and I pulled into the parking lot. I went in, I did all the paperwork that I needed to do, got all the processing. It was basically they had to reset their passwords. And they'd given me four sticky notes. Here's one of the sticky notes here. They gave me these 4 sticky notes that had the passwords on them. And they said, go home and reset the passwords. And I only needed 3 kids. I have 4 kids in the home still in school, but one of them had already been enrolled. And so I said, I don't need this 4th one. And so she walked away and she took some sticky notes with her. And I went home and I got online and I started resetting all the passwords. And what I'd realized was they'd given me, or the story I made up was that I only had, I had the wrong, she gave me the wrong sticky note. She gave me the one for the second account and not the main account. So now I'm mad and I start cussing at myself for not checking. I start yelling at myself and I'm just, the whole thing that we're working on is to clear that. I get in my car, and as I get in my car, I take a breath. I remember David's lesson, take a breath, breathe through it, let it go. And I'm driving and I pull into this parking lot and I get out of the car and I watch and I let go. In my mind, I let go of the thought that I was being attacked. For a moment in time, I just let it go. And it let it float. And I pictured the thought floating by of the not being an attack, and I let that thought float by. And literally, I looked down, and right at my feet at that very moment was the sticky note that I was looking for. But the piece I want to get is the way that I spoke to myself in my head. I was like, "You're so intense. This is such a small thing. It's just a little sticky note. Why are you so intense?" And we got to realize that we still have coding in our mind when we have personified external messages, voices from the outside world that we turn from the outside to inside. Well, how do we shift? I sit here and talk about the worth of love and how complete and how you are love and all that jazz, and that you're not, the reality is that you're not in a concentration camp. You didn't go through all the things that, that they went through. But this goes beyond loving yourself. If you really look at the voice, the chatter, the radio station, there are seeds of wisdom in that pain. One of the things I learned while in addiction was that what I was doing when I was in my active addiction is that I was trying to kill off myself. And then there's truth in that. There's a part of me that didn't want to be that I anymore, that didn't want to be that me anymore. There's a part of me that wanted to transcend past the life that I'd created, past my ego. And the problem is this is a misdirected impulse to really get rid of the I that is self-loathing, the not myself, but the I that keeps me trapped in suffering. Negative thoughts really give us a signpost that tells us that you're not the negative thought, but the one that's aware of the thought. Instead of being identified with the thought, wearing the thoughts like they're your own, like putting, like you talked about, rolling up into that like a blanket. What if I just let it float by and not attach to it? See, you can't stuff the thoughts down. I was talking to somebody, a client last night, they were talking about stuffing down thoughts, stuffing down emotions. You can't stuff them down because we still have moments where our mind shoots out these negative thoughts, these judgments, and these feelings. It's how we choose to attach to them and make meaning out of them. And when we become aware that we aren't our thoughts, we become aware that we don't need to make them us. We can respond instead of react. I see this great example of transmuting emotion in a movie I'm getting ready to show you, A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, with Tom Hanks. And in the movie, Tom Hanks plays Mr. Rogers. That's in America. He's a major figure for many of us that had him as a kid. And in the movie, there's this journalist that's been given the assignment to find the darker side of Mr. Rogers, like demands that he finds the dirt in Mr. Rogers. And look at life. In life, don't we all have these same opportunities where in your life there's a situation, there's a person, there's a thing that it seems its sole job is to make you react out of those negative instead of responding. And when we see this journalist try to shift the narrative and make Mr. Rogers shift into this negative mindset, these negative thought patterns, it doesn't go into detail. Like you're going to see, I'm going to show you two examples of it, but it doesn't go into detail. But what we see through the brilliant acting of Tom Hanks is how he deals with those situations. In these scenes, he's being prodded by the journalist to talk about the dark side of being Mr. Rogers. And these two scenes that he's acknowledging, he's talking about the burden, he's talking about what it feels like to be Mr. Rogers, and let's let Tom tell the story.
Fame is a four-letter word like tape or Zoom or face. What ultimately matters is what we do with it.
And what are you doing with it?
We are trying to give children positive ways to deal with their feelings.
This piece will be for an issue about heroes. Do you consider yourself a hero?
I don't think of myself as a hero. No, not at all.
What about Mr. Rogers? Is he a hero?
I don't understand the question.
Well, there's you, Fred, and then there's the character you play, Mr. Rogers.
You said it was a play at the plate. Is that what happened to you? What did happen to you, Lloyd?
I got into a fight.
Oh my. Who did you get into a fight with?
It's not important. Jerry.
And who is Jerry?
My father.
Oh, my.
I'd rather not talk about it.
But what were you and your father fighting about?
Can you put the puppet down, Fred?
This is the second interview. Notice how he encroaches on Mr. Rogers'
Stop making the
space
show
here
and
to make you feel the uncomfortableness that Mr. Rogers is going through.
Well, at that point, I felt the program had covered all the major facets of childhood.
And what brought you back? Money? Boredom?
My sons had grown into teenagers. We were struggling. We all were, and I realized then that there was still so much more to talk about.
I can't imagine it was easy growing up with you as a father.
Right here. Watch him breathe.
Until recently, my oldest never told people about me. He's very private, and that's okay. And my youngest son, he genuinely tested me. But eventually we found our way, and now I'm very proud of both of them. But you were right, Lloyd. It couldn't have been easy on them. Thank you. Thank you for that perspective.
You're welcome.
I just like this part, so I added it.
Neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in the neighborhood with you, so let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Would you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
I wanted to show that to you for a couple reasons. One, now that song is going to be stuck in your head the rest of the day. So first and foremost, you're welcome for that. You can thank Mr. Rogers for that. But the other piece I wanted to look at was there were two very specific scenes here where the journalist poked at Mr. Rogers. He said, "Well, what about Mr. Rogers? Does he think he's a hero?" And you see him look at him like, you're trying to attack me. You could see him processing. You know, they don't talk about it in the movies, but if you go back and you look at the writing, the post writing and how they debrief, you can, the whole premise here was him processing that emotion that was coming in, the attack that was coming in, or that what he was perceiving as an attack, and then twist it around and align it with a deeper purpose. And so that first scene that you saw, he says, you know, well, Mr. Rogers, and he looks at him and he sees what he's doing. He's attacking him, and then he notices his face. He'd been beat up by his father earlier in the movie, and he says, "You say that you were," and he goes right to curiosity. He goes right to compassion. He shoots right over the attack and goes right into go back to the situation that we just mentioned where you have a people, place, or thing, and you feel as though you're being attacked. If you looked at that situation, that person, that place, that thing as something that you could be compassionate about, if you take the space in the identity of compassion, how does that change the perspective? Does it give you space between the emotion, the attack thought, the position that you're holding? And then the second scene, he says, he sees a dig. He said, it must have been really hard to be, your kid as with you being Mr. Rogers. And again, you see him stop and breathe. He takes a breath in, breathes out. He doesn't want to react. He wants to respond. He always wants to respond. And he says, here's the truth. And then he acknowledges the lesson that individual has for him. You're right. You're right. It must have been difficult. Thank you for that perspective. And he allows himself to take on the perspective without holding on to the pain, without holding on to the judgment, without holding on to all of the things that we hold on to that cause us to suffer. We go through this process where week one, what we do is we get aware of the radio station that's in our mind, that we're caught in this realm of attacking and being attacked and really, fighting to try to shift the narrative. And we go, man, I just talk to myself like crap. Like, you wouldn't talk to somebody else the way you talk to yourself. You never would. There's just no way. You wouldn't have anybody around you. And once we become aware, and it's not a judgment piece, it's not a, man, I fight, because then you're just adding on to the noise. Week one is just about that awareness. The first step is really gaining that awareness. The first step to any problem is knowing that you have it. And then once we understand that part, then we move into the second stage, or the second week, if you're doing it in a 4-week process, where we practice flipping the switch. We practice looking for a way to say, well, what if I went to something else? What if I went to, all of a sudden we catch ourselves in the attack thought, we go, compassion. Oh, that switched. And then we go back, and many times we go back into negativity, because that's the default for the mind, is is survival. The default for the mind is ego. The default for the mind is looking for potholes. And so then we catch ourselves going back down and we go, oh, curiosity. Then it's not about, when my kids, I've got 7 kids total, 5 left in the home. I like to make sure that I always quantify that I'm going the right direction, right? But the kids would have these switches on the wall and they spend their day. You ever see a little kid just go, huh? And they're learning how to turn on and off the light. Oh, wow, I didn't know that did that. That's what we're doing in the second week. We're just practicing the process of shutting on and off the light. We're practicing, oh, I get to shift the station. I get to change it. And then week 3, we make this commitment that we're going to live in a beautiful state no matter what. A beautiful state is those condensing it. We have 2 emotions. We have emotions that condense us, and we have emotions that expand us. Well, you really only have, you've heard the term idle thoughts. There are no such thing as idle thoughts. Idle thoughts don't actually exist. We have 2 thoughts. We have thoughts that focus us in, and we have thoughts that expand our awareness. And so week 3 is about committing to live in this awareness, this beautiful state: curiosity, love, acceptance, gratitude. All these are, happiness, joy. It's all these are great states to live in, and we make a commitment that we're going to live at that higher vibration no matter what. And when we find ourselves dipping down, then it's about flipping the switch, the button, the switch on the wall, to get back up as quickly and as efficiently as possible so that we can live in the state that we're truly, I believe, meant to live in. And then week 4 is about, like David's talking about, filling potholes. It's about looking for areas in your life where I keep landing in the same pothole. I need to either dig underneath the pothole and find out what's underneath there that's causing the pothole, or what I need to do is I need to just not walk down that street anymore. If you've got people in your life that are constantly negative and they're just dragging you down, well, then maybe you need to find some different friends. Maybe you need to join a group. Maybe you need to go somewhere else so that you're not putting yourself in that same situation. Week 4 is about taking back control. And what we do is we come here in this group, and each week we check in regards to where we're at in the process, what we're learning in the process, because this is not a Stephen-run group, this is a group-run group, and what we're learning personally while going through the process so that we can share the resources and we can all rise together. That's what we're doing here. And so I like to give you guys a little something that I chew on every week, just so you can leave and have something to take away that I give you as my gift. But at the same time, my biggest piece for me is, as we check in, learning where everybody's at so that I can then take what you're learning in your life and then integrate it into my life as well.